Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. My name's Neil and it's time to talk Ahsoka. And we kicked off last week with a really solid first episode of this new series. It did a lot of heavy lifting because it had to do two things and do them pretty darn well, if you ask me. It had to introduce a bunch of secondary characters to an audience that was probably 50-50, either very familiar with them or not at all familiar with them, whether or not, based on whether or not they'd seen the cartoon series Rebels or not. So you have to walk this really fine line of how much do we tell the audience about these characters that Ahsoka is very familiar with and fans of Rebels are very familiar with, but people who've only ever seen live action Star Wars will have never seen or heard of before. The Heroes and the Sabines and Thrawn and whatnot. So how much do you share? It's a really interesting problem and one that I thought they did a pretty solid job of in the opening episode. Aside from introducing us to familiar characters, or reintroducing us to familiar characters rather, we also got to meet these two one's ex-Jedi, maybe they're Sith but maybe they're not, force wielders, Balin and his apprentice, who I don't think has been named on the show yet. May have been named in the subtitles, but I don't read subtitles. I don't watch with subtitles on unless I'm watching foreign language. So I'm oblivious at this point. But the point being, they have not red, but red-ish lightsabers. Balin's saber was identified as one made by a Jedi. He was identified as the user, but he disappeared at the end of the Clone Wars, presumably during Order 66, when a lot of Jedis either were killed or went into hiding. So that's not surprising in the least. But it appears he's found an apprentice. And they are, if not Sith, perhaps they're Sith adjacent because they are working directly for Morgan and therefore indirectly with Grand Admiral Thrawn. And more importantly than that, they now have possession of the map that leads them to Thrawn, which Sabine decoded last episode. So that's where this series appears to be going. We teased the search for Thrawn back when Ahsoka first appeared in The Mandalorian. And now we're actually pursuing that story thread. Because, as anyone who's seen Rebels knows, Thrawn disappeared at the very end of at the end of Rebels, and along with Ezra Bridger, the hero of that series, and never to be seen or heard from since, both presumed dead. And yet there's mounting evidence that at least Thrawn is still alive, so maybe Ezra is too, which is enough to get Sabine back on board because she and Ezra had a tight familial relationship back in their younger years. And there's the additional threat that if Thrawn reunites with the remnants of the Empire, then he's easily the most daunting commander that the New Republic might ever have to face. If Thrawn had been in power during the events of the original trilogy, things may have gone very, very differently. But since he was missing, things ultimately turned out in the New Republic's favor. His return would be a bad thing. But excited to finally see Thrawn whenever that may happen in this series. Excited to see Ezra if and when that ever happens in the series. Crossing my fingers that there's other cameos from the cartoon that make it into live action, like our governor from last episode, or who knows what. Like, is Hondo out there or something else that would be equally exciting. But I'm ready to jump into episode 2. I hope you guys are too. This is part 2 of Ahsoka, and it's called Toil and Trouble.
I found it.
You hear Toil and Trouble, you think Macbeth, you think Three Witches. We found out last episode that Morgan is a witch of Dathomir, so that seems to be that connection. And it's a very interesting connection because the witches of Dathomir were Force users of their own, just in a very different way than the Jedi and the Sith. I really like this new opening music. It's so different than anything else Star Wars, you know? It's like part East Asian meditation garden and part horror soundtrack.
This isn't just about finding Ezra. It's about preventing another war.
The droids. They took the map.
Relax.
None of us should be surprised she survived.
You don't understand. I unlocked it.
Where did the path in our galaxy begin?
They took the map before I could decipher it.
I mean, it would make sense that it would start at Lothal, right? Because that's where Ezra and Thrawn disappeared from. This is a lot like the temple Ahsoka was at the start of last episode. Is this another Dathomiri site?
Better, I believe we have located the reflex point on Cetos.
Is that where they are now? Cetos? The reflex point. High-tech space Stonehenge. That's a frame straight out of Rebels. They're spending a lot of time with the Loth cats.
I should be able to work with it.
What happens if you get the power levels wrong?
The head will explode.
I say go for it.
Because you're a hologram.
Yep.
It's now or never.
Now?
Now.
Unnecessary tech drama.
Switch it off.
Not yet. This droid came here from Corellia.
Morgan Elsbeth had factories on Corellia.
I'll meet you there.
This place was not built by the Jedi. Whose work is it?
An ancient people from a distant galaxy. Would you like to see it?
It's not... Oh, is it Dathomir or is it something else? Oh, that green light screams Dathomir, Witches of Dathomir.
That is our destination. While Grand Admiral Thrawn is banished.
Are those the space squid circling the outside? The Purgils?
Thrawn calls to me. Across time and space. The Eye of Sion is on its way here. Make sure that everything is ready for its arrival. What happens when we find Thrawn?
War. A new beginning. Power. Such as you've never dreamed. Go to Corellia. Assist Marok with the final transport.
Alright. So she's going to cross paths with Ahsoka and Hera there, at least. To Corellia. That is the ghost. I was like...
Ahsoka Tano. This is Min Weaver, Regional Supervisor.
All Imperial assets were dissolved and redistributed, including those held by Morgan Elsbeth.
Chopper!
Do the facility still employ any of her former staff?
Of course, there's no other way to remain operational. You will still find ex-Imperials at every level of the New Republic government.
Don't you worry about their loyalty?
Not at all.
I was wondering if you would consider bringing her back on as your apprentice.
Maybe we're both past that.
And isn't she way too old to be an apprentice by this point?
I see you still have your lightsaber.
For all the good it did me.
Have you kept up with your training?
Obviously not.
Well, perhaps it is time to begin again.
I don't think that's up to me.
Really?
She quit on me.
The past is the past. Move forward.
Forgot how annoying you are.
Logical.
I never had the talent, the abilities.
That much is true.
Thanks.
Your aptitude for the Force would fall short of them all.
Is that a hyperdrive core?
Refurbished from an SSD, ready for its new life serving the Republic.
The New Republic Defense Fleet isn't building anything that big. What class of starship are they for?
Classified.
I'm a general. Nothing's classified to me. Stop that ship.
I can't do that, General. They've been cleared for departure.
I said stop that ship. That's an order.
No. Chop off a hand. That's what Jedi do. Oh, you totally could have made that jump.
to stand down and return to port immediately.
Oh, we're doing that, are we?
Keep your lid on, Chop. Ready a tracking device. And don't miss this time. No, I did not go through your stuff. Did you look under the backup battery? Great.
Oh, I thought he was going to helicopter out of there.
Now, Chop!
Nice. Breaking out the old armor. Man, it looks good. Did they ever say whether it was Beskar? Cutting off the hair? I feel like this is that scene in every samurai movie where they cut off their hair. Yeah. Just don't give yourself a Kanan haircut. Just go back to how it was.
I'm ready.
Are we actually recreating that final beat from Rebels now? We totally are.
Nice haircut.
The transport was traced to the planet Cetos.
Okay. So that must be the origin of the route to the other galaxy.
Take us out. Padawan.
Alright. Reapprenticing. Oh, we're carrying on. I figured that would have been it. So what are these Empire loyalists building?
Soon the Eye of Sion will be complete.
The sooner the better.
The appearance of
Sion.
Ahsoka Tano on Corellia troubles you.
She's coming.
Nothing can prevent our journey.
To kill her will be a shame.
So they need a new form of transport just to get to Thrawn. Okay. So where did the map come from? So that moment, for those of you that haven't seen Rebels, that moment with Sabine at the mural and then Ahsoka appearing is basically the final image of Rebels, the cartoon, which is super cool that they recreated it for us and put it in context, because Rebels ends with Sabine narrating basically the future, what happens after the Battle of Lothal. But there we go. Sabine is Ahsoka's Padawan again. A very old Padawan, all things considered. If Luke was considered old, and even young Anakin was on the old side. But there we are. We're chasing this Eye of Sion now. Well, we're following the tracker to the Eye of Sion, where Morgan Elsbeth is, she's building it would appear she's building a vessel capable of getting to this galaxy where Thrawn has been exiled. So that's been what's preventing Thrawn's return at this point, is the literal distances in space. Like it's too far away. The technology doesn't exist, but just 9 hyperdrive units is apparently enough to do it. So we're on the verge of that technology. But anyway, for the sake of storytelling, I'll allow it. But I'm still confused about where this sphere, this map, came from. How does it know where Thrawn is? It couldn't have come from Thrawn, or could it? I don't know. I'm bumping on that, but maybe I'm just not well enough versed in the lore, the deep lore. I'm sure Dave Filoni, if I asked Dave Filoni, he'd have an answer for me. I just don't know what it would be. But maybe some of you guys can help me out in the comments. So we have a mission, but I'm curious as much as I love Ahsoka, what we've seen of her so far in the Rosario Dawson interpretation of her, and this is nothing about how Rosario plays her, this is about how she's being written for live action so far, is she's not a character with an arc. She is an ideal. She is the ideal gray force user. Neither Jedi nor Sith. She has a very strong personal code. She's an ultimate warrior. She's a master of herself and her surroundings and the Force. She doesn't really have flaws. But I like that which is very, very different than the Ahsoka we grew up with during the Clone Wars, where she was an impetuous teen who had a lot of lessons to learn from Anakin and from the other Jedis that she lived amongst. And, you know, she learned lessons from the clones and, you know, countless other alien races that she encountered and helped. And she learned a lot of lessons in the Clone Wars. And I think that's one of the things that made her very interesting. But I like that there's at least a crack in the armor right now. You know, there's obviously bad blood between her and Sabine. They tried the master and apprentice thing before. Ahsoka bailed, not Sabine. Ahsoka gave up on it for some reason. I have to assume there must be some sort of parallel to the master and apprentice relationship she had with Anakin, or, you know, she there must have been some sort of there's got to be a reason why. And not a petty reason, I don't think, because she's such a capable force user and such a capable person all around. So I hope we dive deeper into that backstory, and I hope we see some personal struggle and growth in the current story, along with the adventure story that we're embarking upon. That's what I'm hoping we get. Whether we get that or not, I don't know. But I'm crossing my fingers. The show looks great. The fights are really solid for live action TV. They're not going to match some of the great animated lightsaber battles we've had. You know, maybe the best one of all time is an Ahsoka battle with Maul in Series 7 of Clone Wars. You know, we're not going to get Duel of the Fates from Phantom Menace, because that's a cinema budget versus a television budget. And even though Disney is pumping tons of money into their live action Star Wars franchises, they're still on a schedule and on a budget that is much tighter than any movie of, you know, another of any sort of Star Wars movie. So things get pared down, but they look good, and I feel like Rosario's really embraced the role and embraced the training side of it. She's doing as much of her own stunts as possible, and she looks good doing it. I enjoy that. I appreciate that. I've worked on stunt-heavy television before in the past, and it really makes a difference when the actors buy into really understanding and mastering the fight choreography. It makes a real difference, because you're given so many more options as far as how you want to film it, and therefore how you want to tell the story of the fight. If you're only able to do a couple of close-ups of your actor and everything else is your stunt doubles, then the camera positions available to you are just drastically reduced, and your fight feels more generic, because that's how everybody shoots a fight, with stunt doubles, with fight doubles. Anyway, I appreciate every time I can see the actor's face in a lightsaber battle, especially on a TV show. I like the path they've put Sabine on already. She's already had a bit of an arc just in these first 2 episodes, just by reaching the point of willing to become a Padawan again. Not just waiting for Ahsoka to come to her, but like putting herself out there a little bit. You know, the symbolic cutting of the hair, putting the Mandalorian armor back on, returning to where she was at the end of Rebels, presumably when her first apprenticeship started. So yeah, this is exciting, and Heroes along for the ride. We got to see Chopper for the first time this episode. Forget what a talkative little bastard he is, but it's fun knowing that Dave Filoni's doing that voice, and he's the closest thing to an English speaking droid that doesn't actually speak English. You can almost interpret what he's saying just through the heavily modified vocal files that he expresses. So it's fun trying to decipher it on the fly. And yeah, he's a little psycho, isn't he? Good to see he's still kicking. I really wonder who else may be showing up. You know, we had that really random appearance by Zeb in was that in Boba Fett? Where he appeared in the bar for a moment without any real story attached. It almost felt like it was a camera test for something that might be something like this. But we also know from Rebels that he went back to his home planet, which is sort of on the far edges of the galaxy, if not beyond. But anyway, man, it's weird to attach nostalgia to a brand new show. But I mean, that's one of the lovely things about Star Wars, is it triggers all these emotional responses because it's all interconnected, because it all ties in together and it's so well interwoven. And those memories for me go back to the late 70s when I saw the original movies in the theater. And, there's been Star Wars content scattered throughout my life ever since. So yeah, it's only natural that those feelings of nostalgia that this stuff brings up can be pretty powerful. So yeah, I'm in my happy place, guys. I'm excited for more. I can't wait for Thrawn. I'm realizing I'm never going to see David Tennant in this, am I? Because I think he's just the voice of our pilot droid slash. I keep forgetting his name, but our lightsaber expert. So I guess that's all the David Tennant we're going to get, which is a shame because isn't he awesome? Hero or villain, he's amazing. We've teased Ezra in the little hollow recordings. Really makes you want to hope that we see him for real. We find him alive. I know from the trailer we're going to get Thrawn for real. That's exciting, and cannot wait for that. So there's a ton of anticipation in this series for me, and now we're racing towards it. I'm still very these two opposing. I'm going to call them. No, they're not Jedis. They've expressly said they're not Jedi. These two opposing Force users. They're very gray too, aren't they? They aren't black or white. They aren't Sith or Jedi. They're definitely somewhere in between. And yes, their sabers and their robes are supposed to make you think they're evil. But then we get moments where, it's like it would be a real shame to kill Ahsoka because she's one of the few Jedi left. And yet we know that they're also doing this for power. They've expressly said that's why they're doing it. They're bringing Thrawn back for unimaginable power. If you could be, if Thrawn's the new Palpatine in their minds, they can be the new Vader. I feel like that's the thought process. And Vader wielded incredible power in the days of the Empire. So why wouldn't that be appealing? Anyway, they're not just evil for evil's sake, though. There's something interesting going on there, and it's also reflected in when we were on Corellia at this converted plant that used to be Morgan's, but is now part of the New Republic. The employees are still, the same employees as from before. Everyone is still working. Everyone still has a job from Empire days to New Republic days, and that only makes sense. You don't just fire everybody from their jobs because the government changed, but there is some level of loyalty, and whether that's just financially motivated or ideologically motivated depends on the individual, but there's enough people who still believe in the Empire kicking around, and we've seen that throughout the Mandoverse. The seeds of an Imperial rebellion are certainly there to be nurtured by the right person, and that right person Like, you feel like if anyone could do that, that would be Thrawn. That's the war we need to prevent. You know, stop Thrawn from coming back so that he doesn't take advantage of this latent potential rebellion that's just kind of stewing under the surface. Yeah, man, it's really interesting stuff. It's in some ways a quieter series than I anticipated. I'm not sure that's a bad thing, though. And I'm also not sure if things aren't just going to keep ramping up. But so far, we're not having a lot of face-to-face conflicts. And that makes sense. It's only episode 2. So far, we're facing off against droids. And I don't know if that was which brother that was with the dual-bladed spinning red saber. But yeah, the Jedi Hunters are still out there. And we'll be facing off with them again, clearly. But yeah, we're on a path now, and I'm curious to see how quickly we get to Thrawn. How much of the story is about getting to Thrawn, finding him, finding Ezra, and how much of it is what happens once we find them. That's what I'm very curious about. But we'll find out next week in part 3, won't we? So until then, everybody, take care, stay healthy. We'll see you soon. Cheers.